Okay, we have the Town Hall Building Committee, October 27th, about 6:30 p.m. I say your first name, say your full name, and say that you're here. Mark,
Mark Cameron here.
Josiah,
Josiah Stevenson here.
Carolyn,
Carolyn Coffey here.
and Phil Lear, and I am here. First thing on the agenda we have is the timeline update. Who's going to do that? John, great, thank you.
Okay, hey everybody. So I had some side conversations with Mark, and basically Mark asked to take a look at the process of where we are. As you all know, we started the CM at risk process, but never went to RFP because we didn't have a schedule to give them because of the non-commitment of the select board. So now that we have Johnson Roberts finishing the drawings, he asked me to kind of look at what it would take to try to get to town meeting with a bid in hand, assuming a conversation with the select board that said, go ahead, keep moving. Reminder that we have the money voted at a prior town meeting to move ahead with pre-construction services. We have the pieces we need if we could just get a commitment that, we can bring this thing to bid, and get it in the street. So I prepared a rudimentary bar chart timeline where we can move some stuff around. But Mark, I know I sent this to you, and I'll share the screen. Actually, you need to enable sharing for me if you could.
Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you. All right.
I believe in you.
Probably doesn't help that I'm doing this all from a Mac, which I usually don't do.
I don't diss Max.
See if that works, John.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Can everybody see this?
Yes. So John, if I could just add some color to that.
Please.
So this was the idea of this was to help us have a tool that we could present to the select board so that they understand the timing and how much time this takes to get from our current status all the way to a number. Because even if we were asked at this point to come to special town meeting in December, there's not nearly enough time to get there. Even spring is getting tighter and tighter by the day. So there's a lot of steps here. And a lot of these steps take a significant amount of time. So this will be a tool that we can use to communicate with them, as well as I think a tool for us to keep ourselves on track with a rough idea of where we're at and keep ourselves on track.
Thanks, Mark. So if, basically what I did was try to back into a town meeting that, according to Michelle, will take place sometime around the beginning of May of next year, somewhere in the 1st through the 8th. Okay, so that's our star at the end. So basically, if I'm gonna back up from the end and do it that way, and and again, this assumes very little time between a guaranteed maximum price from a CM and town meeting. This assumes we have the flexibility to give a number and then, a budget number and then plug it in with the real number very close to town meeting. If we don't have that flexibility, if you said we needed to have it a month earlier, this is almost impossible to do already, just from the time frame. Actually, let's just start from the beginning. As we know, Phil right now is finishing the design, okay? And regardless of when this finishes, I put in here kind of the beginning of December, another full month, although I think, I won't speak for Phil, but let's just assume for the sake of this, we're ready to go with a design by 12/1. Well, we've got to get a CM on board, okay? And I show us going to get a CM within a week from now. So if you told me we're going to meet with select board next week and we're going to try to do this, we have to start, and we have to start soon, and here's why. It's a month to, it's a couple of weeks to advertise and then, to get the RFQ responses in. Then after that, we have the RFP. And frankly, this 6 weeks here is probably a little tight. Probably needs to be another week longer. We contract, and again, no real explanation here of how we would stretch things out because of the holidays, but I wanted to put it on there because we might slide some things around. And then, actually the first thing we would have the CM do is to take a look at the bid documents and do an estimate. Okay, so that we could say, okay, where are we? Are we in the right spot or not? And then what happens after that would be, kind of the value engineering that we talked about. And, I kind of put a bar in here that shows that we would have like 2 months to do that. And the reason why we would have some time is because once the CM's on board, we then need to go and pre-qualify all the trade bidders. So, the 15, 16, 17 trades that would be on the job, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, all of the, miscellaneous metals, masonry, all of that, the standard stuff that's defined by Mass General Law as filed sub-bidders. It's also the same categories for trade bidders when you're doing CM at risk. So we do all that pre-qualification. They advertise, we respond, we run through it all. This is, this 2 month period here, we could probably shrink a little bit. So if we need a little more time on the CM, this is where I would take it from. I would take it from here, make the green bars skinnier, make the yellow bars a little wider. Once we have those guys pre-qualified, then that becomes the pool for the bidding, okay? And the trade bids are bid, but at the same time, you can also bid the non-trades. And the non-trades are handled more by the CM, whereas the trade bids are handled, like traditional filed sub-bidders. There's a bid package that's put out, bids are advertised, and they are received. The non-trades, a little more informal, and there's actually scope buyout meetings, and this would be for guys like the site work. It would also include things like, rough carpentry, drywall, not plastering. Plastering would be a filed sub-bidder if we had it. But point being is there's 2 classes of subs and you're bidding them both at the same time. And through all that period after you're done bidding, then it's time for the CM to kind of try to develop a guaranteed maximum price. And obviously they would be working on all of the non-trade, all of the not subcontractor stuff concurrently as well. Things that they're self-performing, any trades that, any labor that they're providing, whether it's for cleanup or for general trades, they would be building that in. And then at the end of that GMP, that's essentially your bid. That's the number that we would go to town meeting with. And as you can see from this chart, it's already a little late. So, I'm not quite sure, this is option 1, I should say. Option 2 would be to go to town meeting, in May of next year with just an estimate. If we're going with just an estimate, we have time. You can see, because all of this pre-qualification here in the middle and this bidding, this all goes away. So you would have time to go and get a CM maybe right after the holidays, get them on board, look at it, but then you're not going to town meeting at that point with a bid in hand. You're going with an estimate from your bill. So those are the 2 differences. But, so obviously, if you take away this big gray box, all of this that we have up here for the selecting of the CM and the bid and the review of the bid documents by the CM, all of this could slide into January, February, March of next year. But if we want to get a hard bid from the CM, we need to go next week, to try to really to drive this. So I just said an awful lot. So see if you have any questions.
Can you refresh my memory on why we chose CM?
Yeah, Josiah, the thought to go CM was because of the craziness in the market. Actually having the builder provide kind of the additional estimating. Obviously, the longer we go, it is you're losing a little bit of the value. That's you still have the ability to bid this thing, design, bid, build if you wanted to. Obviously, when we petitioned the inspector general or applied and they said yes, We thought there was more time, and more time to have them on board and have them participate, kind of in these later stages of design, feedback. You can still do that, but it's obviously abbreviated now.
Yeah, my experience we work with CMs 90% of the time or more. And I appreciate them because during design, they're on board and can tell you about methods of construction or estimate things and give input. When it comes to they come on and bidding, then I know it's a premium for sure. And I just wanted to put that out. And obviously it adds to the schedule. So
It definitely adds to the schedule. When it's a little more complicated of a project from a site standpoint, it's tight, there's neighbors. You can appreciate some of the, we would have them on board, and yeah, there wouldn't be a ton of input. There would still be input. It is basically 2 months of time we would have with them where we could have them shake out Phil's drawings. Maybe I wouldn't do it this way, let's do it that way, where some changes could be made during that pre-qual phase. So the value is not zero. There's something there, but is it the value of having them participate, to your good point, through the end, through a good chunk of the design? Yeah, we've lost some of that value. We certainly have. And not a decision we need to make now, unless, I take that back. You can always pull it and go design, bid, build, but it gets more complicated once you hire them and start paying them.
So with respect to having a bid in hand or an estimate in hand for May town meeting, how do you feel the difference puts us? What is the I guess the option and an advantage of just going with a estimate versus a bid? Does that work better from a timeline perspective for us to give us more
sure.
time on the front end?
Yeah, if you did an estimate, and hired a CM, you would still get the benefit of so in all of this time, if you just focused on the CM piece, the yellow and the blue, you would have the ability to stretch this box all the way out here. There's lots of time to spend, with the drawings, with feedback. You've got the pre-construction dollars. The only difference, and you would, going to town meeting with an estimate by your CM who's going to build the project, I'd still feel pretty good about, because the non-trade stuff, they can solicit some bid numbers, unofficial bid numbers kind of things. But that's kind of, it's still an estimate. What you lose is the ability to go to town meeting and go, we bid this. Here's the number. Is it going to go up? No, this is their number. This is what we're going to write the contract to them for. Here's the contingency on top of that. Here's the bottom line. So you lose that piece.
Because after that star there, that's in early May, late April, May there, right? We still have there's another star that has to come a week or two later for the ballot vote. And then after that, and only after that, can we then start spending money for the project as a whole, right? So then at that point, that's when we're going to have to really have a plan together for temp town hall, and we're going to need to figure that out, but we can't make any commitments prior to the ballot vote.
Yeah, so it's a great point, Mark, and the reality is, and we talked about this a little bit and alluded to it, is that you're going to also, while you do this, because of the market, because of procurement issues right now, whatever the decision is, let's use the generator as an example, whether it's a small one or a big one. It's about a year right now to get these things. So basically, if you're going to look at a 12 to 14 month, project to begin with on site, you need to order that generator on day one. Well, you can't, because you haven't done submittals and shop drawings. So what we would expect to see after a town meeting vote here is a period of time where we would call it a procurement phase, so let's say, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, up to 12 weeks. That gets you to an August 1 start, basically shovel in the ground. And when we put together the bid documents for the RFP, we would want to say that, because we've all kind of seen it on our projects. You need to give them time to order, buy, and wait for some stuff to get there. If you try to hit the ground running right away, you can, but that doesn't, there's going to be something later that comes up and bites you. So, so what I would rather do is tell them, don't come on the job for 2 or 3 months. That way you're not paying general conditions. And we would say that in the RFP. We would say, there's going to be 2 months of kind of just office time. So you would be paying a lesser amount of general conditions than the on-site time with the PM and the full-time superintendent and all of that. You could take a step back from that and be paying a reduced rate while they purchase the project, basically.
We would need that anyway in order to relocate the staff and empty the building and everything.
Thank you.
So.
And that would be the time period, Carolyn, where we would think exactly right. That would be where we would go, and we would have an RFP ready to go, and even maybe advertise it a little sooner before town meeting. And and if the project failed, pull the RFP. If the project passes, boom, it's out there, it's ready. We can look.
So what do we think? Forget from a construction standpoint of the project. What do we think we need from a time period after the ballot vote to the point where we could vacate town hall and be into a temporary 3 months?
Yep.
So
it's going to be about a month. It's going to be about a month to you could pull the trigger a little early, but then there's the question of who wins, and then there's the question of what state is it in. Everybody's kind of thinking of a particular, might be thinking of a place that you reviewed and went to see and said, oh yeah, this can work. But if that RFP, if as an example, if that landlord doesn't respond and instead someone else does, when Steve and I did Upton, the place they ended up being in was in the basement of a decommissioned Catholic church. They had to build partitions. They had to do a rudimentary fire alarm system to make the building inspector and fire chief happy. So there's all that kind of stuff that would have to take place. So you run the risk of there being an overlap. So I think 3 months is probably a minimum, you would say. But if you go more than 4, now you're not getting anything done in September. The big thing.
Do you think that is that 3 months after the ballot, or are you saying 2 months after the ballot and cheating of getting a jump start a month early before the ballot?
Oh, I think you cheat. I think you cheat a little bit, but depending on the results, you cheat with the RFP and give yourself 3 months. And if you can always tell them a little soon, in my mind, you could always say, okay, CM, we got favorable results. The place where the town hall is going, the temp town hall, doesn't need a lot of fit out. They're in good shape. They can get out of here in 2 months, not 3. Great. Mm-hmm. Then you can give it to them early and say you can revise the on-site date from 8/1 to 7/1. Just throwing numbers out here. But yes, that period, that procurement period, becomes your office RFP period. They're one and the same.
I think maybe what Mark is saying also is if, at some point before town meeting, if they want to send me a submittal or they're going to send me a submittal of the exact generator, for example, that we have specified for us to look at with our consultants. And then we approve it so that when town meeting vote and then the ballot comes in, they can order that the following day. We're certainly willing to do things like that. As long as we don't get too far into it, both us and Vertex and the CM aren't want to go to do too much, but they could certainly include that as part of their pre-construction services if that was something that you thought we needed to do, we can have that conversation with them as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm mainly concerned about the temp town hall. You know, we don't live in an environment where there's a tremendous amount of options here in Cohasset. And so I instinctively, I feel like our hands are going to be tied there. Going to be limited options. And it's just going to make that process a little bit more constrained and challenging. So just want to make sure we have the right amount of time built in to do so.
Yeah, if you didn't want to spend the time and the money to do a design, for example, for fit up of a space until you knew whether or not it was going to pass, then you really can't have that RFP ready to go. Right? So that's one of those things you'll have to decide if there's any risk in there that you're willing to take.
Yeah, you also don't know who's going to answer. So you really can't even, you know, when you're putting the RFP out for that kind of service, you know, you say what you're looking for a square footage standpoint, and you really can't do anything to it until you know who responds. You can have an idea, you know, you could have done your shopping and hope that John Doe submits a bid, you know, but what happens if, you know, Jane Doe submits and it's a different location, and all your planning kind of goes out the window because it's, you know, different location, different condition, but it's half as much, you know, that will impact kind of the best laid plans. But again, you have no vehicle to go and sign an agreement sooner.
Correct.
Until town meeting. So I mean, from that standpoint, Mark, I mean, I think you know, if you separated this bar, you know, you could probably, you know, if this was the bar for procurement, you could probably slide it back a month. You know what I mean? You could probably start the procurement of a temp facility, because you would advertise and wait and get the results in right at town meeting, or right around it.
Yeah.
Or excuse me, let's back up a minute. I think if you're going to the extent of trying to bid the project, then let's also bid the temporary space, so that you have a hard cost for that too, well, from a lease standpoint. You know what I mean? It makes sense. You're bidding, if you're going to go for a number, let's go for a number that has you know, as much data as we can in it. So you could bid this, you know, even take it back another, you know,
But when you say take it back, are you bringing in the finish date, or are you keeping the finish date at the yellow star?
Well, no, to me, the yellow star is when you could start. Like, so again.
Yeah, that's not moving.
Yeah, it's not moving. It's not moving unless everything works.
So if you
might, yeah, no, good point. You're not going to, because you want that procurement period.
Yeah.
But at least you know that you're not going to have the town hall workers stuck. You know, they've got a home. So I think doing the procurement of the temp town hall sooner, you know, and the associated move is, you know, and if you can get out earlier, you know, let's say they move out here right before the 4th of July, great. Hey, CM, you can take it right after 4th of July weekend, whatever, or you know, July 1, you know, for a lease start date.
Yeah,
but that probably means soliciting bids for space.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying, Phil. I'm saying start that early. Yeah.
Subject to availability of funds.
Yeah, start it early and time it, and say, you know, start 7/1 start. You know, you could advertise it in February if you wanted to, with a 7/1 start, and see who can respond. And then if they can't start on 7/1, you know, give them a spot to say when they could start, you know, kind of thing.
And then we could potentially have that answer in hand before we even go to town meeting.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So basically, this is, just to be clear here, the duration of this bar is to advertise, bid, and then move. Okay, so, you know, it's really a series of
Yeah,
a couple of things. You know, advertise it, get it, you know, contract, and then, you know, and then actually, you know, move the staff.
yep.
So I think that's the right call for that. And that's the right call, even if you decided to go with just estimate only. Because you could still go to town meeting with, you know, by the time you get to town meeting in the ballot, I think you need to know where the town hall workers are going to go. So you can do this process with the, you know, the relocation, advertising, and then contracting and relocating. You know, you can start that before in either scenario, whether it's full bid, trying to get to a full bid, or just a bid document estimate.
So given the fact that it's still a volatile bidding climate, the idea of an estimate to town meeting seems scary to me. Like it's not a real hard number. And the other question I had is the CM giving a number, that's a GMP, right?
Correct. So what we would do, Desire, is we would ask them for a number, a gut check, you know, sometime the start of the year. Actually give us an estimate, give us a CD estimate or bid doc estimate, because essentially Phil's going to be done. They give us an estimate. We all can see where we land, see what, you know, see how everybody feels about it. Is it still in the same budget? Has it gone up? And then we have the time after the fact to, okay, let's have a discussion about, you know, is there VE that needs to take place? Is there some budget revisions that need to take place? That's what we would do in January and February. And then while we start pre-qualifying those trade bidders, all the subs, that's when the bid documents could be being tweaked. If we're going for the bid. And again, this process here would only be made better if we scrapped the timing wise, if we scrapped CM at risk. If we got rid of CM at risk, then it just, there's pre-qualification involved of the GCs as well, but you would lose all of this. You wouldn't have to. So you would essentially, you would gain back those 2 months it would take to get a CM. But
That's where we go back to our presentation and commitment from months ago.
Yeah, right. Low cost, you're going back to low cost GC, right? Low bid GC.
But does it have to be, it's a public bid, so it has to be open to qualifying GCs. It can't be these 6 that we pick, right?
So great question. So because of the value of the project being over 10 million, you are going to have to pre-qualify. If you design, bid, build it. If you hard bid this, you're going to have to pre-qualify.
But pre-qualify is like the state pre-qualifying the contractor, or us going through things and say, we don't want you to submit?
So we do it in accordance with the state regs for doing it, with DCAM's regs for doing it. There's a score sheet, you know, and it's the same process whether we're using whether we have a CM and we have to pre-qual all of the subs, or whether we do non-CM, then we have to pre-qualify the GC and the subs. And in either case, the bidding pool comes out of that pre-qualified group. If it's a CM, you're picking your GC early. All that's left to pick is your subs. If you're going hard bid, you have to pre-qualify GCs, and if only 4 GCs are pre-qualified, that's the maximum number of GC bids you're going to get is 4. That number only goes down.
Right. Just to clarify, just to clarify, so it's not DCAM who allows the contractor to submit, it's us who takes the DCAM information and allows them.
Yeah, basically it's a statutory kind of RFQ. It talks about management personnel, it talks about prior project experience, talks about capacity to complete the project. In there is also their DCAM certificate, their DCAM update statement. You know, we check references as well on financials. Check the financials of the GC.
The reason why I asked this is because I was asked to evaluate general contractors for them. And there are a couple for DCAM, a couple I said, you should not allow these people to bid on your projects. And there's so much pressure for them to accept anyone unless they're like huge lawsuits that I think if we happen to do it this way, I think it would be only if we got to say who to accept.
Yeah, so basically you have to set up a rubric. And if you learn something, let's say they have a passing grade, but yet you hear a story, as long as if there's, or let's say there was somebody that Cohasset worked with prior and you had a bad experience. And even though all of the other grades, like even if you get, you give them a horrible reference, unless everybody gives them a horrible reference, it's probably not enough to disqualify them. That being said, you as a municipality, as long as it's being done in good faith, if you don't want to work with somebody, you really don't have to work with somebody. That's okay. Doesn't mean you're not going to get queried. Doesn't mean they're might not, threaten to sue you, through the town. But at the end of the day, as long as it comes from a place of, being done in good faith, and you're kind of applying similar logic firm to firm to firm, that's okay. But if it's like, oh, I've heard these guys are bad, but yet all of their documentation speaks otherwise, as long as if you're being arbitrary, then they're going to have grounds to come back and call you to the carpet a little bit. But I mean, one of the things we would suggest for this, if we were to go back to hard bid, was one of the categories of pre-qualification is historic general contractor. So GCs that have worked on historic buildings. Again, 2/3 of your project is new, but that being said, there is a way to be able to at least get builders who have done some measure of historic renovation on the project.
Mhm.
So, we do, there are options for design bid build, but with CM, you would ask that up front. The difference with CM is you have a chance to interview the people you're going to work with. You don't have that on design bid build. You don't get to meet anybody. You get to see names, but you don't get to actually understand their approach to the project. It's talk to you when we submit the bid, and we'll meet you on bid day when we see who wins. So that's the big difference. But I think what this shows me is that if we're going to do this, we need to start. That's the thing. Like if we're really going to if we're going to get a CM and try to come to town meeting, to Josiah's point, with data, with a bid, it's almost too late. And that's 6 months from now because of all these steps we have to take. So, I mean, we could restart the RFP process, or the RFQ process, excuse me, to get the qualifications of a CM. Could start that as soon as, the Central Register next week. We would just refresh the RFQ that was already issued. We would put it back on the street. But after that 2 weeks, we get the response, then the RFP phase is next. We need to be able to commit at that point. Are we going, what's the schedule going to be? I mean, the question is short of an answer from, if you don't get an answer from the select board, you're going to spend the money on a CM to do pre-construction on a project that you don't know whether or not they're going to say, yeah, go to town meeting, we'll take this to town meeting in May. That's the question. But this tells me that and if you can't answer that question right now, the longer you take to answer it, you take a month, we don't have time to get bids for town meeting under the CM at risk delivery method. You're not prevented from doing it under design bid build, but then you've lost that ability to work with your work with your builder, through the winter. So clear as mud.
So I'm sorry, what was that off the page? When would construction start? What would be the date?
So we would
Digging in the ground?
we would look, like an 8/1 date, Josiah, giving them the 3 months to procure after a town meeting award, because you have to remember if you go CM, they're already under contract. All you'd be executing is an amendment with them, as opposed to because you already have that start money to do the CM. It's a lot cleaner. Town meeting happens, the money's there. We issue the GMP amendment to their contract. good to go. Contract's already done. With the design bid build scenario, you would have to wait. You couldn't execute that contract until, date certain, after town meeting when funds are certified as available.
So what's the action item for tonight? Do we need to decide tonight that, yes, we want to go forward with CM regardless of what the select board says? Or do we want to say, gosh, this looks too tight, we're not going to make it, and the select board is, not giving us enough feedback to know for sure that we're going to town meeting in the spring anyway? So let's not do that because there's too much uncertainty. Or, I mean, this is all great information, but Mark, what is our action item for tonight?
So originally we were thinking that we would present to them on Tuesday. I think Tuesday is pretty overwhelmingly jam-packed for them because it's the last day that the last meeting that they have to deal with the articles on the warrant for December.
It's
Okay.
yeah, it would be too late to get on their agenda now anyway.
We'd have to, it would have to get, the meeting's having to get posted tomorrow if it hasn't already been posted, and we'd have to be on that agenda. That was the original plan, is that we would meet this week and then we would meet with them next week to present this. More than likely going to be the following week. The idea here is that we're presenting to them the option or the options that we have to come to the table with the big ask, which we're intending to be, whether it be a bid or an estimate, in spring of 23.
I think we need to go to them not with the options, but with a recommendation.
Yes.
We can tell them what the options are, but we need to be able to tell them that the committee thinks that this is the path forward.
Yep, agreed.
Because otherwise we'll never get.
It'll just circle around. So, John, with this option here that we have in front of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
We previously got approval to spend $200,000 for CM services for pre-construction, and so that checks the box of anything between now and when we start on site.
You have the money to do this, yes.
So if we do a bid versus an estimate for Maytown meeting or Springtown meeting, I presume that we're going to spend more money to get the bid than if we just with the CM. Than if we get the estimate.
No, for sure, because what we would have to do in the RFP phase, Mark, is give them some guidance about which one we wanted. So, like, if the committee is still leaning to CM, my suggestion would be is I'm going to go and get an RFQ teed up and advertise it, because I'm not going to get a response for 2 weeks. That's going to take 3.5 weeks to get. In that 3.5 weeks, you can tell me what the plan is. You know what I mean? You can give us that direction. And if by some chance that direction is, select board says, nope, we're waiting. We're waiting on this. We're shelving it. Whatever the answer is, or go for it. None of that's wasted. The worst case, maybe we're wasting a little bit of time with the CMs, but I would rather get it out and not hobble us. See, that way we're keeping the option of you having a bid still in play. It's getting tight, but it's still in play. And we can operate with it that way. Listen, remember last time we only got 3 guys.
Yeah.
And in the end, one of them pulled. So we were only going to have 2 CMs looking at this and giving us a price proposal.
Do we know which one pulled out last time?
Yeah, it was WT Rich. They had other work pop up, and it was, again, I'm glad they pulled, because it wasn't a job then. You know what I mean? We ended up without moving ahead. So, I would put this back out there. It's not committing us to any cost at that point. I would be a little bit, I would say there's one of 2 paths that's going to happen with this. Either we're just going to have you do an estimate or whatever, but more details to follow in the RFP phase. That way they at least know what we're cooking.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, if we get through this again, and they tell us to stop, it's just BD stuff, it's BD for them. And a lot of the stuff, the RFQ is proof that they've done CM work. The real work is in the RFP, when they give you a project specific work plan and how they're going to do it and pricing, the RFQ phase is more boilerplate. The RFP phase is project specific. So if we kill it before the RFP phase, no harm, no foul, and at least we've maintained some semblance of a schedule to do this.
So that's interesting. What is the, there's 4 of us here tonight, but are we still leaning towards a CM, or are we thinking of direct bid? What? And so
I'd love to hear what Josiah and Mark have to say, since they're in the industry, and whether they're still the value add that we thought they would be when we came up with this plan last fall, or last, whatever it was.
I think it has value because I think we're building a relatively, I mean, it's not the most complex project out there, but it has its complexities. It's situated in our very important downtown common district. And I think the CM approach gives us a little bit more control as to who's running the project and the expectations. And I think that the level of those folks will be a little bit higher than a strict bid from a qualified, quote unquote, qualified contractor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first thing, I would make sure that we go to the town meeting with a number and not an estimate. That just makes me too nervous. And I think a lot of the CM benefits have gone away, but it's true, we have more control. So I'm paranoid because, well, you and I, Carolyn, the project didn't go forward in the past, and it was because of money. So, that would weigh in on the CM versus hard low bid.
The other option you have, guys, too, is, oh, go ahead, Mark, sorry.
And I respect the fact that money is often the driving factor here with these things. But, I think it's important for us to also get the input from a CM and hear the number that we need to hear, even if it's not the number we want to hear. And I think that's
no,
important.
that's right.
I think it sets us up for being better protected. I mean, we don't want to get into a position where we can't finish the job because we didn't have enough money secured, or we have to delete significant components just in order to turn over the building in hopes that we can do them later.
So here's what I would suggest, guys, is you can have a little bit of the best of both worlds because you have the money aside. As you can see from that, from the schedule, we have in end December, early January, a bid document estimate by the CM, and how we had planned to phase the contract was kind of this pre-construction piece to get an estimate, then the actual pre-construction piece, and then construction. So what I would say to you is get the CM on board, do the estimate, and if the numbers were, and get the numbers from that CM, and then if you wanted to change route, we just be upfront with the CM and say, listen, they've changed their mind, give them a fair number to do the estimate. I mean, and that would be in their cost proposal, and we can reserve our rights to move ahead with a different method. You always have the out. You don't have to walk the rest of the path with them. Let's say the number comes in and it's $1 million higher, and we can save 5%, on 20, round numbers on 20 million, you save 5%, you can save the $1 million back by going design bid build. You could change paths. We have seen projects do that. We've never done it, but again, we're in kind of crazy times right now. So I think, Mark, you could hire the CM, get them on board, start with the estimate, we huddle as a group and say, okay, what do you think? And if it's crazy town, you would have the ability to say, okay, guys, look, we're gonna end it and switch to design bid build. I don't love that approach, but you can do that. You're not just because you hire these guys for the first phase of a contract, the contract is going to be written in such a way that you can stop. Similarly, if the project doesn't get approved, you don't owe them anything beyond the work that the costs that you've agreed to through pre-construction. So I would say first part of the proposal is an estimate for the existing bid documents. Second part of the proposal is pre-construction to get us from that estimate through actual bidding. And then part 3 would be the GMP. And each phase is an amendment to the contract with its own separate notice to proceed.
Okay, so should we vote on this being the preferred path? Do we need to vote now? Do we?
I think if you just tell me to go ahead and restart the CM RFQ, I don't, tell me to do that. Tell me to do that. Let's just get started with that to begin with.
I don't think we need to, I mean, we voted for the CM, that's our direction. We're not changing direction, so
Yeah,
we're continuing on, so I don't think
correct,
we have to
correct.
vote.
We're just doing it again. That's
Yeah.
right.
So I don't, unless we were changing something, we would otherwise have to vote, but I think we're just continuing on. I think, John, you make a really good point there. Getting the advertising, at least we're getting something done. And then it sounds like we do have the option if things go bad with the CM down the line to go to direct bid if we need to, if things don't go well with him or them. So I don't see us really changing a path at this point.
In fact, I could even, the Central Register was due today at 4 o'clock for next Wednesday. I can submit it when we hang up the phone today, or close this out, and then call the Central Register first thing in the morning and ask them to move it and put it in next week's. Like, I don't like the idea of losing a week right now. So I would get that ad out there for next week. We have the document. It doesn't need a whole lot of tweaking to be made available to folks again.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah.
And then I just need to talk to Michelle about getting a newspaper ad. I think I did it last time in the Patriot Ledger. I don't even need her to do it. I'll just do it and send you the bill. It's no big deal.
So we want to, so this will be our preferred path, and if we have to modify, but this path here that we've got on the screen gets us a bid in hand with a CM for May town meeting.
Yeah, it's tight.
Okay.
It's tight, but I think it's still doable.
And that tightness isn't even necessarily revolved around that critical holiday period there that you've.
No, I mean these 2 weeks right here, useless.
They are useless. I mean,
nobody's around, so.
Well, that's why I say in the bid document estimate by the CM is right in there, and.
So the idea by if I can get that in, this week, I fill in this block, one block, 2 block to advertise. We get it here. We picked this one up. I'm going to assume we're going to have a similar short amount of small list of folks. Let's assume we only get 3 again. We'll interview 3. You know what I mean? And that's, we can then, I'll have the RFP ready. Another, you want to give them a couple of weeks, to look at that, come visit the project, look at the plans. That's the other thing. We would give them the plans in their state that they have now. So we'd probably give them the 3 weeks. And then if we could interview them the week before the holidays, it's not the best time in the world, but at least if we get it out there now, guys, look, here's what we're trying to do. Here's what we're trying to preserve. I think it's fine. Because remember, when this isn't, I would be hesitant to receive bids in this period, but the reality is we're receiving a CM's cost proposal, which is really about general conditions and a fee percentage based on an estimated project value. So it's not bidding per se. It's really, what size staff do you need and how long do you think they're going to be out there?
Okay, so you're going to advertise, we're looking at presenting to the town select board when?
So I think Michelle, when I spoke to her, said next week is full. They meet every week? They meet every
We're
week? or
meeting every
other?
week because between now and town meeting,
Yeah, so I would say get on the docket for the following week.
For the
which
8th?
is going to be the 8th.
Yeah.
John, just a heads up, in case you need me for those interviews or those prequels, I'm not available the week of December 19th.
Why?
Um,
Well, you know what? You say that too. I'm out of the country from the 12th to the 20th. So.
Maybe we'll see each other.
We also have Thanksgiving week in there to think about it, because I think there were some interviews, the RFQ interviews. Is
Yeah,
Thanksgiving
so,
week, or
yeah, again, Carolyn, that was, what I need to do now is let me get this thing out and advertised. And we're gonna have to work on a much more specific schedule to be able to show these folks. And if we have to slide some things with, now that I know that this is kind of what we're gonna try and pursue, I'm gonna do a more detailed schedule. This was down and dirty, so we could slide the bars around and see where it goes. But I think, we are gonna have to look a little harder at some of those details to make sure that you don't want to preclude or mess up anything with reviews and advertising times and timeframes and find ourselves short dates because we included holidays when we shouldn't have, or that sort of thing. So knowing that we're going to start with this now, I'm going to hang up. I'm going to do the ad for the Central Register. We'll call tomorrow morning and get it bumped back a week to the recent edition next week. And we'll, hit the ground and get as much done as we can here.
Have we covered everything we need to cover?
I think so. John, can you send that to us or me, and I can distribute?
Yeah, I'll send it to you, Mark. Let me make a couple of tweaks, make it a little more clear, and I'll send it back to you.
All right. And what do you think about adding just a construction bar, like a 14-month construction bar, just so that, the select board members can see that?
Yeah, so what I would suggest is let's do this, and then what I would do for them, if we're going to do another slide, I'll do a more condensed one that shows maybe an actual Gantt chart that shows it in months, because obviously this is only the next 7 months, and then 14, the construction is going to take up 2/3 of the schedule of the bar. So let me do this for the detail, and then I'll do and now that we've talked, I'll probably put it all in a Gantt chart. What do you think's better received for them? Is this a more digestible format than
I think it's fine for them. I don't think they're gonna.
Okay.
That's essentially a Gantt chart anyway. It's
no, I know, but it doesn't have the fancy, bars and predecessors and all that. Good stuff.
I don't think you need. I don't think you need that.
All right, so
we need to jump into this. That presents well, I think, in just getting them an overall picture of.
So I would do this is weeks, and then I would do one below this in months.
Yeah.
That kind of keeping the color coding, but then would show construction at the end. We'll have two. We'll have this and then a different one for to show construction and kind of the overall project duration.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
so what will we be asking the select board for? Just confirmation that that they support us? They would have to take a vote, really. Do we want confirmation that Springtown meeting is a go?
Yeah, because if they, let's say they call you off and say, until we hear from, I know there's,
Until we know the 10-year capital plan.
Yeah, right.
What could be the answer?
The minute
Well,
they
that's the thing. I don't think that we actually need them to vote on anything, because we've got all the direction we need from the last town. We were given this information, or this approval before via town meeting, right? What I think we're looking for is the wink and the nod and the encouragement to continue on without this being a wasted effort. Because if,
Yeah, we're about to start spending your 200 grand.
yeah, if they don't
Right.
support this, if the board is going to be split in any way when we bring this to town meeting after we've then spent $100,000 to $200,000, it's a different
In
conversation.
addition to everything that's already been spent.
In addition to everything that's already been spent, it's a different conversation than, you know, if you've got something to say, then say it now and maybe we can adapt to it. But don't come back to us and say, well, why did you go do that? Well, we had your support here. We're looking for your support.
Do we need to do some cultivation of the individual select board members between now and that meeting?
Probably wouldn't be I mean, non-resident here, but probably wouldn't be a bad idea to let them know, hey, we're coming to you to give you an update, to tell you that our plan to get to town meeting with bids in hand. That's what we're doing. And if you don't want us to do that, we need to know, because we're going to spend about 200 grand to do it. The money that was appropriated, but we're going to spend it. I mean, and if someone doesn't want to, you know, if someone doesn't want to do that, they're going to have to speak up.
I think it might be good to lay some groundwork so that they know that they know what's coming, and it's not like aired to them, you know, in a full meeting where they have to digest it and give us a response. If they know in advance, then they can digest it on their own and be more prepared to discuss it. Just a thought.
Wouldn't hurt.
Or at least with whoever, or at least with a couple of them.
Mhm. Yeah.
Sounds good.
So,
Okay, anything else we need to do?
no, I think this is great. So we have some direction, and this is good.
All right, Mark, you good?
I'm good.
Josiah, you good? Carolyn, you good?
Yeah.
Steve, anything more?
I'm good. Thank you, Phil.
Yep. Phil, you good?
Yes, thank you. I'm all set.
Yep, thanks for coming. John, we all set?
I think we're good, Phil.
Great. Thank you very much. We'll be in
Motion
touch.
to adjourn.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good night, guys.
Good night.
Right.